Good evening. This is December the 17th, 4 o'clock, regular meeting of Town Council. I'll call the meeting to order. With that said, Rhonda, would you do roll call?
Butler?
Here.
Circus? Mattson?
Here.
Shank?
Here.
Good.
Here.
Okay, the very first item of business is public comment. Is there anyone in the public that'd like to come forward to make any comments? Come on up. Yep.
Choose one wisely, one's an ejector seat. Or not.
Hey
Good
there.
afternoon, how are you?
Good.
My name is Thomas Kosich. I'm president of Metro District 2, and there are 250 homeowners within Metro District 2, right across the street here at Base Village. Metro District 2, I know most of you know this, but for those at home, is the financial arm. The taxpayers are the financial arm that provide critical infrastructure and services that each and every one of us enjoy, both locals and tourists. You know, this weekend was a wonderful weekend, and I share with everyone's excitement of finally seeing the completion of Base Village getting very, very, very close. The ice skating rink was incredible. All the newspaper articles were fabulous. But I ask each and every one of you to just pause for a second. And please do not forget the 250 homeowners across the street from you who are right now entering year 2 and pursuing significant damages, not limited to, but including the current developer and past developers of Base Village. There's plenty of time for backslapping, but let's not forget about what has happened there. I was skiing this afternoon, and I was thinking, why would the mayor and why would the council care about this? I mean, after all, for the most part, these are very wealthy people, second, third, fourth homeowners. They don't live here like all of us. They don't vote here. Why do we care? And it's really simple. The reason we should all care is Snowmass is a fair community. It's an ethical community. And to just forget those people because they're not locals, and really they have money, they're not here. You know, I often wonder, how interested would the town council be and how interested would this community be if it was 250 locals over there that were in a lawsuit? And I will leave each and every one of you with this statement. I want you to think long and hard about it. Each one of those people came here wanting to be a part of this great community. They wanted to be a part of this great community. They did not come here to be taken advantage of. And I encourage each and every one of you, including the folks watching in this entire community, just Google Metro District 2 Base Village. All the legal documents are there. We're well on our way to year number 2, and I know each and every one of my constituents are looking forward to their day in court. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to each and every one of you.
Thank you, Tom.
Sir, could you please sign in the back for me?
Can't do that for you. A smile, I'm joking with you. Of course I'll sign it, yes.
It was like,
Thank you very much.
Told you it was a hard one.
Anyone else in the public that would like to make a comment? Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for approval on the consent agenda, which includes draft agendas and minutes for approval? And agenda summary, board appointments and alternates. That was on page 12. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion. I do have something. Rhonda, did you get my note about February 11th, my email? I know it's not, this already came out.
got it after the packet.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Okay, very good.
Okay, you're out on the 11th?
Out on February 11th, which is a work session.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, and I found a mistake in the minutes.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Bill, for the second. Is it a material or is it a grammar?
It's I think a missing word.
Okay,
Line item?
135. I don't know, that last sentence, it just doesn't, I think it's missing a word.
Which,
It's for the CP.
135.
The CPAs And it was mentioned in the meeting that the CPAs, even though they're outside the actual CPAs, if there was any development anywhere else,
Right.
you guys had mentioned that you wanted them to still follow the guiding principles, and Clint said that was definitely the intent, that they would follow the principles, so I can add that we would definitely.
I would just say, maybe say that was definitely or, I don't know. It just sounded weird. Maybe there's needs another comma after Clint Kinney. I knew what you were trying to say. It just didn't
Okay.
make sense.
I can add, Clint assured that
Sure.
CPAs outside, any land use issues outside the CPAs would follow the guiding principles.
Sure.
Okay,
That's great.
thank
Oh.
you.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. All in support?
Aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Let's move on into the second reading of an ordinance amending the Town of Snowmass Village Comp Plan. Well, come on up, Brian.
I'm gonna do this, some
Oh,
talking.
this is a Clint show.
Brian's here to be the brains behind the operation, since I said. So honestly, I want to start with saying congratulations. It's 2.5 years or more, depending on where you want to start your clock, on how we got to this. And I know there's been a ton of work, and I want to take just a few minutes to kind of walk everybody through how we got here and what we're looking at, and then with any luck, we'll adopt a document that's taken a long time and has got a lot of public input to get this thing ready to go. So actually, almost 3.5 years ago, March 2015, the town council adopted a set of goals, and one of those goals in that goal statement was to do a full review of the comprehensive plan. So you all set that goal over 3 years ago. In June of 2016, the Planning Commission finished its report, and the town council accepted the report, saying, yes, a full review is warranted, let's get going. Since then, a lot of work's happened since June of 2016. There's been an untold number of opportunities for public input. We had initial kickoff meetings. If you remember, we started down, those first initial public meetings were down at the rec center for 2 or 3 days. We had individual stakeholder meetings with different businesses, with different community members, with different boards and commission members. We had a think tank created of 10 or 12 or 14 people. We had the 5-day Planapalooza event where we had people coming in and giving all sorts of opportunities. After all that input, we had over 50 meetings of the Planning Commission and the Town Council to take more input into this entire process. The best part of that is that I think we listened. If you look at what happened or what the original draft looked like and what it looks like today, there were a lot of changes. We started with a document, we listened, we asked for input, we got more input, and as a community, we continued to listen, and this document that's before you tonight is a reflection of that. I would say I wrote down, so, some concepts through that input were modified, some were really enhanced, and some were absolutely eliminated. And it was just due to your perseverance, the Planning Commission's perseverance of making sure that this document is truly reflective of what Snowmass Village ought to be thinking about. Through all that, it was clear that that through all these meetings, it was clear what the community values wanted. The council wanted to make sure the overarching value or goal of sustainability remained on top. And it was clear from the community that conservation and environmental stewardship be an overarching goal as well. That ethos that needs to guide decisions, and it needs to ensure that new development is controlled and to protect the natural environment, and primarily to maintain the small town atmosphere that we enjoy here in Snowmass Village. Hopefully, this document, all 200 and whatever pages it is of it now, 50 before the summary, before the appendix, reflects that. The input that we received was exceptionally valuable. The hard work of the Planning Commission was fantastic. There was lots of debate, lots of discussion, but it was all hopefully here to make this document what it is today. And finally, you guys, I counted up over 40 Planning Commission meetings. I didn't take the time to count up town council meetings, but you're in the 20s to 30 range, I'm sure. And so with all that, I think it's really fair to say that this is a community document. This is a document that we ought to really be proud of, and something that is reflective of the community. So how does it work? Hopefully, it's, in order to meet the standards, high standards and expectations of the community, there's 3 parts to the document. There's the plan frame, or 4 parts. There's the plan framework, there's the aspiration statement, there's the guiding principles, and there's the just big enough analysis. The aspiration statement didn't change from 2010. That was adopted back in 2010 and started long before that, but that aspiration statement really, hopefully, puts in words and thoughts and feelings what we're aiming for. The guiding principles were a new component. Those came right out of the community discussion. The guiding principles are stewardship, vibrant, genuine, active and healthy, balanced, connected, and inclusive. Those guiding principles are something that when development projects come through, we need to make sure we're reviewing those developments with those principles. The Just Big Enough framework is just that. It's a economic analysis that was done back in 2003, 2004, and saving you a lot of numbers and a lot of thought. Basically, it says we don't want to be any bigger than we need to be economically viable. We don't need to grow for growth's sake. We don't need to grow because for any other reason other than to make sure that we're just big enough to be viable as a community and as a successful resort. Finally, the plan framework. I'm going to read this part if you don't mind, just because I want to, because I can't say it as well as it was written. But the approach to conservation and development presented in the plan framework portion of the 2018 comprehensive plan reaffirms the community's desire that major development and redevelopment be limited to protect the natural environment and community character. By focusing on sustainability and conservation, the 2018 comprehensive plan fundamentally limits any noteworthy development or redevelopment in Snowmass Village to 3 areas: Town Park, the Snowmass Center, and the Snowmass Mall. Again, growth for growth's sake is not okay. It needs to be wise, thoughtful, and ensuring that it meets our natural environment. From those thoughts, a number of strategic initiatives were identified. Not surprising, on top of the list is to preserve and protect open spaces and environment, promote environmental and economic sustainability and resiliency, focus on improved access and safety of Snowmass Village, continue to improve multimodal connections between Base Village, the mall, and the Snowmass Center, manage parking and transit, focus new development and redevelopment within the identified CPAs, encourage the updated and renovation of old buildings in Snowmass Village, and strengthen the local economic opportunities to assure vibrancy. Those 10 or 12 initiatives are going to be a lot of work, and I think will hopefully guide us as we go forward in our goal making for the council and future councils. But they're created in such a way that you can't just check the box. We got to continually work at those initiatives. Finally, I think it's just important to remember that all this plan is set up to do, or what this plan is set up to do, is to ensure that the small village character and unique natural splendor of Snowmass Village be protected well into the future. That the fundamental goal of the 2018 comprehensive plan is to recognize the intimate connection the town has with the environment, to focus on conservation first, and allow for a limited amount of development and redevelopment in appropriate locations to ensure that our future and sustainable resort community is held up. It was a lot of work, and I told the mayor before the meeting started, I know we're all tired, but I really wanted to make sure everybody understood the big picture of what was achieved through all your work, and it's going to be an exceptionally useful document for us. And with that, it's staff's recommendation that the council adopt the ordinance before you.
Well, Clint, it's taken a heck of a lot of work, but you, Julianne, John, all members of staff worked their little nails off and had many frustrating moments, I'm sure, but many happy moments. Our planning commission went through a lot. We all got a lot of phone calls. We worked hard here at the town council table. We all didn't get everything we wanted, but boy, we sure did come together and agree to compromise on a variety of issues to only make Snowmass not only great like it is today, but better in the future. So, do I have a motion for approval of the comprehensive plan?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 9, series 2018.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, but I just had a question about the ordinance.
Oh, okay, okay.
Sorry. On page 2,
Yeah,
it was
okay.
really just about that spacing. It's really weird. At the top of the page, there's like, it's like double space. I don't know if there's a reason it's like that.
We can fix that.
Okay.
Okay.
It just looked different, and I was like, it didn't seem like it needed to be that way. But that was it.
Okay, so we have a motion, and do we have we have a second? Any further discussion on any element
I-
of comp plan?
I just want to say thank you, mostly, not just to the staff, because they're on payroll and that's their job, but the planning commission did an outstanding job. And I thank them for every hour of their time. And I know they struggled with this. And a lot of my decisions on what we did with the comp plan was based upon their results. So I respect what they did, and I just want to say thank you again to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a major process getting through this. What does the code say about updating the comp plan?
Yeah. That was my next.
It says it needs to be done every 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years,
Yeah.
we need to change
I
that.
think we need to, take a hard look at that and,
Yeah, and so one of our next steps is, after the comp plan, is we've got money in the budget to look at a code revision, revisions to the land use code, and that will likely be one of the first revisions. We might even get that ahead of some of the other revisions, so you guys can consider the timing of that.
Any other further discussion, comments? Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. I see Brian. I don't know where Julianne is tonight.
Yeah, and
but,
These are all-
So Julianne is out sick today for some issues, and I mean, I do want to, she put a lot of work into this, and she deserves a ton
I
of
feel
credit.
like confetti should like fall from the ceiling.
I wish I had thought that far ahead.
You know, we should have the sparklers like we had Saturday night.
Yeah, it's like, let's go ice skating afterwards. So.
These are 2 big accomplishments in 1 week. So
Yeah.
it's a lot for us.
Okay, Rhonda, you ready?
Sure. Butler,
Yes.
Circus, Mattson,
yes.
Shank,
Yes.
good.
Yes,
Passes 4-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Brian?
guys.
Brian,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
so
And-
much.
And everybody involved.
Julianne, I'm sure you're watching this from someplace.
I'll be letting her know.
Yeah.
Nice job. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now, we're gonna have some fun. And that
That
is
wasn't fun?
fun. Peckler has been very busy, and I came a little early and I learned how to make this work. So,
Thank you.
Google Maps, yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Give us just a second here to load our presentation, short and sweet, so don't, I know I have a reputation for being long-winded.
Who told you that?
Yeah, really, where'd that come from?
I'm Walker.
So we have Travis and we have Dave going to show us this amazing presentation on how this is going to work.
Well, thank you, council. Okay. Thank you, council, for your time to present what we've been working on this last year. Travis has been very influential in helping us get this from start to finish. Basically, it was a major redesign of the collateral materials for the village shuttle. We're pretty proud of this. We worked with a firm called Studio 6, a design graphics firm out of Boulder. They did almost all the work that we're going to present to you today. But there was another organization, Trillium Solutions. They were instrumental in getting all this information and our route structure loaded into Google Maps, which we'll touch on a little bit later on. But they were really instrumental in making that happen. Our outreach from the get-go involved all kinds of people in the community. Staff put in a lot of work on this. Marketing representatives helped put in input. We talked to the Aspen Ski Company skier services people that generally deal with information and wayfinding. and got their input, and members of the lodging community were asked to participate as well. So what you see here, there was the old map that we've had for decades. That probably goes back to almost 1998 or before, and on the right is where we ended up. Some of our major goals here was to improve the appearance and unify our graphics into a brand representing the Village Shuttle. We tried to prioritize our transit information. I have a graphic coming up that'll show you the confusion that the old map sort of had. But we tried to give the transit service information a priority. We tried to make that information easier to understand. We had 8 panels that represented each of our routes and all that kind of stuff, and the map was huge. And then finally, the goal was to digitize the material so that made it more accessible to a cell phone. So one of the goals too was to make the mapping more portable and more user-friendly. This was the designing in here incorporated that if you wanted it to fit in your pocket, you could fold it in half yet again, and it would fit in your pocket pretty much the same way as a skier's ski map would. And so this was just to make it more portable and easier and more convenient for our customers. So there you have it. That was the old map. That was all the information that we had. Quite frankly, it was overwhelming to people when they opened up the shuttle map. And on the flip side of all this were the 6 panels for or 7 panels for the different routes that we had running. We found this just too overwhelming and too confusing, and people wouldn't take the time to delve into it. So on the outside of the map is verbal text that tries to explain the organization. On the inside is the route mapping itself. We built the route mapping plan based on a metro transit system, so it looks much like a circuit board design, but basically it's what most transit agencies are using, trying to depict where their routes go, what they do, and that sort of thing. We tried to incorporate into the design of the mapping some attributes that would help with wayfinding, helping you locate where you are. We tried to bring major attention to key destination points. So in this portion of the map, you see the mall, the base village, and that's the Snowmass Center down below. We tried to accent the roundabout a little bit to give some direction there. And we also indicated which way was north for those that are challenged that way. We kept the lodge mapping key, so we're still trying to show you if you want to find your lodge, what route am I on? We gave you that route information. So it was a pretty significant amount of work. We do have some complex routes within our structure. Route 8 has demand responsive areas, so we incorporated dashed lines for places where you may have to call to get service. 2 Creeks is called out because after 5 o'clock we don't go there because when the portals close, there's not much retail activity there. So the Ridge condominiums, another example of an on-demand service. We only go there if somebody calls us up to go there. Up to Colt Circle is another example of call us up and we'll go up there and get you and take you on. We also tried to incorporate RAFTA information into the map. So what you see on the gray line, that's RAFTA service, and that's going down to Highway 82 and trying to denote you're going to Aspen or you're going down Valley. Another significant thing that we worked on with this is the entire service scheduling all in one little chart, pretty simple little piece. What you have, we named our routes now, so for either Woodbridge is kind of the wooden skier bridge crossing the road, it's Route 1, goes to Snowmass Mountain Season for Woodbridge, or top of the village, number 5. So we're trying to name the routes, call them out. Anecdotally, what we found is when we had scrolling things that would try and list Stonebridge Inn, Base Village, Snowmass Center, Snowmass Club, well, by the time you got around to where you wanted the information, the bus had passed you. So it was kind of like, okay, we can't put all this information on the head signs that we would like, but we're gonna try to identify with color, number, and name, what route do you really need to get where you wanna go? So here you see the first departure time for that route, each associated route. We give you the route frequency. We note when the lodge departures are, because we assume going up in the morning, you're at your lodge, you wanna go to the ski area. And then on the other side of the frequency information is I want to go back to my lodge, so there's the mall departure times. We do scale back in the evening, so we tried to restructure the frequency chart so that gave you that information as well. And last but not least was the Trillium work that we had, and Travis is going to show you, we worked really hard to get this to be cell phone compatible. And so Travis now, thank him for all his hard work to get this really put together. He's going to show you how it works on your phone.
I hope so. We've never actually projected phones on the screen here. So Rhonda, can you push the DVD Apple button? It's the third one. So yeah, as David mentioned, the second component of this project was digitizing a lot of information to put it on apps that already exist on most people's phones, like Google Maps and Apple Maps. Cool part about this is it's technology that already exists, that's already in your pocket no matter where you are. So while we're really excited about the map brochure, this is kind of cool because it can be with you all the time, everywhere. So we'll just go through a couple of examples really quick, but basically how it works is if you're in Google Maps.
Okay, hold on here. Okay.
You simply type in wherever you're headed. So, for example, we were hypothetically going to Two Creeks, and it'll give you directions. You have to select transit as your option because it'll assume you're either driving or walking at first, but you can kind of do that right here at the top.
Oh, it's updating. It's updating my app.
Yeah, it's the little bus. Your app is updating? Yeah. So you can just see, it's telling me to take the Route 3. I can select that as an option. It's telling me I can walk to the lower Snowmass Center stop, which should take roughly 1 minute. And I will arrive there at 4:53. I have my phone in military time, sorry. But, yeah.
It's cool.
It's pretty simple to use. You'll notice that the RAPTA information is on there as well, which is actually pretty handy. You can use the map app for, the village shuttle information getting around Snowmass Village, but you can use the exact same technology if you're standing somewhere in Basalt or Aspen if you're looking for a RAPTA bus, which is a nice seamless way to get around. I'll show you the same steps, but also on Apple Maps, which is almost identical, but just has a little bit different of an interface. So in this example, we're saying if we were going to somewhere in the crossings, like 31 Pinto
Well,
Circle.
why don't you just do Two Creeks again, if you don't mind,
Yeah, no problem.
Travis? Because that's what I'm struggling with right now on the Apple map.
Two Creeks Drive.
Cafe takes you to Wave.
Nah, I don't want to go there.
How about Portal? Say Portal. There you go.
So it looks like that was the closest option on Apple Maps to get to the ski portal. I don't know if you saw that or not. I think you can just use the map app to kind of navigate to where you want to go and select it. So right there, just selected the Snowmass ski area for me. I can hit directions. And again, it defaults to drive, but on Apple Maps, it's at the bottom where I can select transit, which looks like the little bus. Tells me it's 8 minutes. I hit go, and it actually walks through the directions step by step. So right here, it's telling me to walk to the lower Snowmass Center. I get on the Route 3 bus, departs every 15 minutes. And after I ride about 4 minutes, I'm going to exit at Two Creeks.
It's great.
Yeah.
How do people know that what that, well, I guess it says, can I Google my ride?
So yeah, we're trying to push this in a lot of different ways. One of the things, it's definitely on the website. So we offer Google Transit as the desktop option right on the computer,
Yeah.
which can be handy for folks that are, you know, planning ahead, maybe planning a ski trip or whatever. We think people don't need to know, which is kind of the nice thing about it, right? So if you're just looking for directions to somewhere you're going, it shows it as an option, just like you would for anything
I
else.
just never have known that button.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, but I have no reason to really know.
So,
I use it for the
I'm not
rapid
coming up with the
stuff.
same thing you are on Apple Maps. If you, can we do it again? If we
Sure.
go Two Creeks, and I come up with Two Creeks Cafe Snowmass,
Right.
Two Rivers Cafe, Two Creeks Drive, where are you hitting?
Burnt Mountain Circle.
So, I don't know, for whatever reason, Apple Maps didn't really have a good Two Creeks option. So what I would suggest for doing that is just kind of selecting where I know Two Creeks is.
Yeah, but if you don't know, I mean, there might be people that have no
A
idea.
lot of people don't know that, correct?
But if you put in the cafe, that is where the bus comes.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Right.
It's true.
So that's
So
essentially
Two
it.
Creeks Cafe, if I punch in Two Creeks
Yep.
Cafe,
That'll get you there. I just did it.
Then you hit the directions button, but make sure that the transit option
Have
is
to hit
highlighted at the
transit.
bottom of the screen.
let me back up a second. Oh, I see. Oh, I got it.
Okay.
I see it now. I didn't know the transit button was there. Got it.
Who knew something so simple
use
to be
Raptor a
so
lot.
complicated?
They won't let me on there with 20-foot pieces of pipe.
We'll make room for it.
And on Google Maps, I notice you can pull up and you can see all the routes
Right.
that are accessible.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's assuming I'm leaving right now. But if I wanted to kind of plan my trip for, I don't know, later today. You can select kind of the time that you want to depart or the time that you would actually like to arrive. So if I'm actually planning on getting there tomorrow for skiing, I want to be there by 9 a.m. Pretty simple. I can just select that as my arrival time, and it's going to tell me which bus to take. So
That's
if I want to
cool.
be there by 9 a.m., it looks like I'm going to have to catch the 8:53 from the Snowmass Center.
On the Google map also, when you start seeing things, you start seeing, if you have, there is a thing about, you can minimize your walking distance. Sometimes it tries to default to maximizing how fast you could get there. And on occasion, sometimes making you walk a longer distance is faster than waiting for the bus, particularly if you're at 20-minute service interval. And let's say you're at Base Village, you want to go to the grocery store, it's going to prompt you to possibly walk. In some cases, we've noticed that it'll say walk to the Rafta bus stop, then catch Rafta and go somewhere and then walk on the other end. So it gives you a lot of different options
Right.
for your trip purpose.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So the number 8, I mean, I know up Horse Ranch, you have to call, but now you also have to call for Sinclair and Meadow. It doesn't automatically go up there?
It does run, in the morning going to skiing, it does run up Meadow Road and down Sinclair Road.
Okay.
But to go the other way, say you wanted to go to the rec center, you have to call for it to go through there. It's long enough trip that it's difficult to make in
Right.
30 minutes if you have to do both legs going up and down.
Okay.
So it's just trying to be efficient, it's trying to make it feasibly financially sound to go through there. And because we have one way or the other, in the afternoon it flips. When you're going back home, he goes automatically through there. But if you want to go the opposite direction, you have to call. So when in doubt, we just defaulted to call, we'll explain it to you, and then you'll be good to go.
And that change was made 2 seasons ago? This will be the 3rd season of that change, I think?
Yes, this is about the
Yeah,
third
because
season.
I stopped taking the bus when I moved up higher.
Oh, up
because I didn't want to go flying down the street on the ice.
No.
So, yeah. I just didn't know.
And part of that was an effort, like David just said, to keep the number 8 more on time. And
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, don't run non-necessary miles.
Yeah.
Don't go through neighborhoods unless you have to, that kind of stuff.
This is great. I like it because you also have the dial-a-ride. That's how we get to and from up and down Faraway.
Yeah.
Everybody's always calling me, how do you get a hold of dial-a-ride?
there you go.
This is great.
That's all
Which
we
is
have.
kind of
for-
the equivalent of the downtowner in Aspen.
Yeah.
Which
Only a
is-
buck.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's a nice option. I mean, Aspen's looking at mobility lab that's 800,000. That's pretty
for the lift.
controversial. Yeah,
That's just the lift.
yeah. Some of the routes are funded by the federal or the FLAP grant. Is that right? Like Route 8 and,
Originally, we applied for what is a Section 5311 Operating and Administrative Grant. It funded Route 3 and Route 8. 3, we made full-time, year-round route structure of 11 hours a day. We did that because between RAFTA and then Route 8, that meant we covered both the arterials in our community, the Owl Creek corridor and the Brush Creek Road corridor. And there was employee housing in both destinations. There was a lot more activity in those areas. So yeah, we got about just shy of $250,000 last year to subsidize Route 3 and Route 8. That said, about a year ago, CDOT got tired of the very complex route allocation spreadsheets that I would send them all the time. They said, look, we'll subsidize your whole service, so please just submit for reimbursement of your payroll expenses, and we'll call it all good. And we said, sure, okay, that's fine. So in a lot of ways now, it subsidizes the whole operation, but it started
Gotcha.
out and was based on Route 3 and Route 8.
gotcha. And based on service records, are those the least utilized routes, 3 and 8?
No. 8's a little light because it depends on the season, but it's trying to serve an single-family housing complex, and it's trying to cover for, once Route 4 goes away, it tries to create a connection to the rec center, and still provide service along the Brush Creek corridor for like Sinclair, the intersections we've been talking about, and all the lodging that is adjacent to it. So 3 is probably like our second or third strongest route. And 8, when it's summertime, it's like the second or third strongest route. RAFTA goes away, Route 4 goes away, so those are pretty high-performing routes. And then 3 and 8 are kind of the anchor for the community. If you strip those services away, this is what you have.
And when you say RAFTA goes away, you're
Well,
talking about
when we
this?
run it as the Village Shuttle runs it in the spring and the fall.
Gotcha.
So our numbers, we don't count RAFTA trips in the summer that they do. We only count them when we are conducting the service.
Right.
So Dave, the new pamphlet,
Yep.
going to be in every bus, or is it at the bus stops, or where?
It's in the buses.
It's in the buses, it's at major places, like out in the foyer and up at the mall,
Lodges.
lodges.
Ski Code got services.
Mhm.
So, for instance, down by the Snowmass Club, when people go under the shelter, they're all quite crowded early in the morning, as you know. You said it's the second most popular route. Do we have a map like this on the wall by the bus stops?
No, we
Is that
don't
a-
have
Is that
that.
an option?
What we have, something a little bit different, but it's a QR code. If you have a QR code app on your phone, and from the looks, I guess maybe some of you do.
I
and
saw
some of
them
you
down
don't.
at the bus stop at Daily
Yeah,
Lane.
if you have that QR code on the map and you scan that barcode, in essence, it's going to tell you what's going on
Oh,
at that route.
Wow,
Yeah, that's pretty handy.
wow. Did you know that?
well, I don't,
I saw, when I was walking down there yesterday, I saw the codes. but I don't have that app on my phone.
But in 2019, we do have plans to kind of evaluate some of our major bus stops
Well,
and incorporate
The reason
some
I'm saying, I
signage
mean,
and
a
maps.
lot, not everybody in the world has a smartphone.
Sure.
Tis true, tis true.
Okay, so, I mean, so people can't scan the
Well-
barcodes and,
Can't you just like take this and laminate it and put it at the different bus stops?
As Travis said, we're working with Studio 6, and hopefully we're gonna do some nicer presentable, full-size maps, and those will start to go into key destination points. And probably, we would probably entertain wherever we have a shelter, we would probably try and incorporate that. So the frequency chart and the route mapping will be there. Our problem gets to be a little bit that we change so much seasonally. So we got 4 different seasons, 3 different route structures, so we have to keep going in and taking things in and out to stay current. But
Well, I
that's
don't
why
think
the QR codes,
I don't think it needs to be a 63-inch wide thing. I
No,
think,
no.
You know, I mean, if you had something 11 by 17, you had, you know, and it doesn't have to have all the confusing colors. So for instance, somebody standing at the shelter by Fairway 3, they're gonna catch the number 3 coming up from the Snowmass Club. Maybe they, you know, because this could be a little confusing for, oh my gosh, I don't even know where I'm staying, you know? And then look at all these different colors, all these different barcode.
we have been talking to Studio 6 about stripping them out, so each route, like the old days, would have a separate panel.
I think that's great.
So it would only be Route 3 or it'd only be Route 1.
Right.
Okay, well, sounds good.
Wait, can I ask one question?
Oh, yeah, let's not try to micromanage.
No, I just have a question. Why is the Route 3 2 different colors? In this map, it's blue, and down here, it's like a purple blue, and that really threw me off.
That's on our list for edits for next year.
Okay. I just
Yeah, I
didn't know
see.
if it was, I mean, obviously, the idea is that someone's gonna cut that out and put that part in their pocket, but it is a little confusing, because then I was like, what is that route, and why is it not up in the top part?
It looked closer digitally, and then when we got printed, they were just
Yeah.
slightly off. But.
And the only other thing I'll say is, I saw this when I was on the bus the other day, when I got on 4 the other night to go up to Base Village, and when it sits in the thing, you can only see this, and it said, your ride to Snowmass, and I thought, I'm in Snowmass, like, it made me super confused. And if I were a tourist, I might be like, what does that mean? I'm already riding a bus in Snowmass. Is this not Snowmass? That's the only thing I'll say. It just cuts it off, and you can't see that word adventure. Once you passed it out today, it was much clearer to me. But that's the only comment that I wanted to make about that.
Okay, good job.
Thank you, council.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, nice work.
Okay. David, you're up. Come on up.
David and David show.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How's the new job going?
It's going well.
Hey,
You'll need to pull the microphone over to you, David.
so David, would you introduce yourself in what your title is? And you're fully oriented, you've been here forever?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Dave Pesnichek, so I'm the Regional Transportation Administrator for the Elected Officials Transportation Committee. That's my official title.
And you've worked now for a couple months now, right?
Yeah, I started back in end of September.
Okay. Yeah, fully oriented.
Go ahead.
You sure? So what I was hoping to do was just have a conversation with you and have an opportunity to have some dialogue about the EOTC, how it's been operating in the past, and how you'd like to see it operate in the future, as well as just give us an opportunity to have a conversation to get to know one another better. As we're gonna have to work together for quite some time now, it looks like. So, as a little bit of background, I have met with the Board of County Commissioners individually, and I've gone over these same questions with them. I've gotten some feedback from their perspective. Going to be having this meeting with you all today, and then I'll be meeting with the City of Aspen commissioner or councilors in the coming weeks. And we'll be going through the same items. I'll be looking for the same type of feedback. But that said, you know, this is intended to be a conversation, so it's not like an exam where we must go through a certain set of questions by any means. But really, I'd like to turn it over to you to hear what you think historically with the EOTC has gone well. And I think that, I don't want to come into this position and start fiddling with anything that you think has been working appropriately and should be carried forward. And I want to, focus my energies, and I think it's more a better use of my time to focus my energies on items that should be have attention paid to them. So I guess that's the first thing I'd like to discuss is get that feedback from you.
David, have you read the entire history of how EOTC came about?
I've spent quite a bit of time with the history of the EOTC. I found that the documents give you a certain perspective, but I think that people who have actually experienced it, granted the elected officials have come on at different times, and that shades the experience that one has with it. But I think that's at this point what's really important is how is it progressing the goals of the valley, and how can we carry those forward appropriately? Granted, the history is very important as well. There's legal documents, there's visioning that is in place and that remains in place and has to be honored. So yes, I have spent some time with it, but I'm still learning a lot of the details.
Well, I do want to walk back to a point in history that to this day I'd love, it's before I finish my term, to really try to resolve. And that is, we have had this concept called lock boxes. You know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
And Snowmass has had a limit on how much money is available to them. To me, if we are designing and working towards a regional transit program, everyone should be treated equally. Yeah, we're on a spine. We're not on the spine, we're on that, like the elbow. But I think equally and as important is the regional issues in transportation in Aspen as we continue to grow and expand here in Snowmass Village.
Right.
We need to not have, what is it, 6.25 million, Dave, or something around that neighborhood?
Yes.
And that really does not change. So, and now with the concept of a transit center, which I'm sure you know all about that project, to me, I hope we can do it and do it right and not be beholden to 6.25 million. So that's one of the issues which begins to suggest the working relationship and working with our partners. So that has not always gone well.
Yeah, my understanding was the 6.25 was dedicated to the transit facility.
No, that's Snowmasses, and that's it.
There's a little bit of gray in some of that, but the mayor's 99.5%. I think we could argue some gray if you were at an EOTC meeting. I think we would argue for a little bit of more flexibility in that. But I think the fundamental premise of should Snowmass Village's allocation be locked or topped off, and the allocations for the city of Aspen not be topped off, is that fair? I think our answer is clearly no. When you speak to the county on that issue, they say, well, we don't even have one, and to which we respond, well, we're all county residents, so you have two. I mean, these are discussions that we need to continue to have and make sure that those allocations are fair.
Right.
And I think that gets tied to, in the bonding question that went with the enabling legislation, identified $7 million for a transit station in Snowmass as a bondable expense, along with rolling stock replacement and a number of acquisition of the Rio Grande right-of-way and et cetera, et cetera. So that's how it kind of got tied to that project and has sort of defined what that amount was.
Was that a 2006 retreat that we had? When the lockbox and everything was kind of set after the bonding? Do you remember
It's about that time just before the recession that there was that sort of, okay, we'll reserve this for Snowmass, but we're going to move on with some other
Right.
matters.
I think one of the best parts about Dave's new job as the regional, I just blanked your title. What is it? Regional adminis-
Transportation Administrator,
you.
yeah.
But, you know, this was a position that was created this year in the 18 budget by the EOTC. And I think, at least in my understanding of its creation, it was to make sure that all the parties are equally represented. I mean, before it was different town staffs or different staffs would set it up. And I know part of the direction that David's got is, all right, yeah, you work for the county, you're a county employee. However, your responsibility is to all three entities equally. And that's part of the reason I think he wants to be here tonight, is to recognizing that and ensuring that we are being listened to, and we get a direct voice with Dave and what goes forward in projects.
I think that's absolutely right. And, you know, part of the feedback that I would like to get is what kind of interactions you would like to have with me as the staff for EOTC. I think different, the commissioners, I think each one had a different perspective on what the type of relationship that they wanted to have. But as a board, you know, we can do, I'm open to doing personal emails, phone calls, you know, whatever works best for you in order to make that happen. And a little bit later, I want to run by some suggestions that have come up so far that I think have some merit, and get your feedback on those too, that I think might just help, I guess, facilitate my position and help move projects forward.
The one idea, like what David just talked about, was, you know, Dave Peckler tries to be here the Monday before the Thursday EOTC meeting.
Right.
If you could have Dave Pesnicek here that Monday also, we think if we could coordinate that, that would be a great opportunity to make sure everybody's equally briefed on the topics going forward. And, you know, he could know where you're coming from going into the meeting, and that's just one example. I don't know what else is on your list, but one example that we talked about. That
I think that'd be fabulous, because I personally see you as the liaison to all the constituents. So that communication and coordination is a critical part of your job.
Yeah, my, at a base level, I anticipate being here for the prep of the agendas,
Okay.
budget reviews, and anything else that may come up that just generally needs to be vetted. And that is as part of the EOTC purview. So that's at a minimum what I expect.
You know, having David here the Monday before our usually Thursday EOTC meeting is great, but I think I don't know how it conflicts with the Aspen Council meeting. Is there Monday, are they Monday or Tuesday?
They are, I'd have
They're
to go back
opposite
and look at my
Mondays.
agenda. They are mostly Tuesday, I believe.
think
I think they've
they're
got work sessions
Tuesdays.
on Monday.
But if there was an opportunity for you to come in with our David, and that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, I anticipate doing that.
what else did you have? What else is on that list?
Well, I guess, was there anything,
Well, there's something
general
else I wanna
operations
bring
with
up.
the EOTC as well? Anything else that, you know, you'd like to?
So I have been using the intercept lot to catch the rafter.
Okay.
And that parking lot can be pretty darn full as you get up close to the buses.
It can.
Now we talk about a mobility lab that's supposed to take another 800 cars off the road to park in the intercept lot. The paved area is not adequate to handle another 800 cars. So then it appears after that presentation at EOTC that if you're not there before the 8 o'clock hour, you're gonna be parking in the mud. So, to me, it seems as though that's coming right around the corner,
It is, yep.
and there's not an answer to that issue yet that I know of. So I think that's one area that we really need to work on between the time the mobility lab comes up, if the goal is to take 800 cars off the road. And it could take more, as a matter of fact. So I don't see personally, I don't see a lot of planning going into the intercept lot for that issue.
There is some discussion now about doing recycled asphalt in those sections. I think that was discussed at the last EOTC.
It was. It was, along with the new picture of the potential bathroom and the coffee shop and everything else, but
Yeah.
my gosh, it should be just get down to the basics. You know, let's do the elementary stuff
Right.
first. Pave the lot.
Get the lot taken care of. You know, the buses run so well. I mean, Aspen to Snowmass, or Snowmass, there connect to Glenwood Springs. I mean, those buses are like this. So as soon as you get off one, there's another one there. Personally, I don't want to get a cup of coffee.
Well, I think it's, well, there is the flap grant that we talked to you about at the last meeting, and that will make some major improvements, some to build some facilities there. Obviously, Aspen's looking at the intercept lot, and we, to a certain extent as well, because it's written into the PUD for Base Village,
Right.
that their employees should be parking at the intercept lot, and the construction workers in their construction management plan. It's a little bit different, and if you have to, you come in and you park and you wait, that's a little bit different. I don't think the goal is to build something humongous, 7-Eleven or something like that, but it is trying to make that a more amenable place for a person that's trying to use it as a park and ride facility. And I think our Town Park Station sort of reflects that you up the ante on the amenities a little bit and boost the frequency, and you're gonna get some compliance from more people than not. So I think your points are well made. Put the dollars into hard surface and that sort of
No water down there.
is important.
Yeah, I would agree with David in that we do have the shift project is coming on, if all goes as planned. And the major issue here is that the flap grant isn't gonna be completed until the year after shift. So, you know, we've got that timing issue in terms of actually improving the lot. The good news is that shift is only anticipated to be 3 months, so, and it is anticipated to be during the summer. So I think that in terms of timing, may help with some of the mud issues in the long term, that they would be addressed in the next season, but I think that you're correct that there would be some issues.
Yeah, it's rainy season. What are you talking about?
Hopefully.
Oh, well, it is what it is. I just think it was not as well coordinated and planned, which I think we need to prevent in the future.
Well, I think there's some real challenges down there. I mean, obviously, paving paradise is a big part of it, right? I mean, people don't want to stand in the mud, but having a huge, expanse of blacktop down there is another issue I think we need to seriously look at. And I think recycled asphalt is a pretty
yeah.
good alternative. And I am fully in favor of flush toilets and amenities at the intercept lot. I think that's going to be super important to encourage people to get out of their cars. But I think the next step is really figuring out the intersection at Buttermilk. I mean, we went round about the underpass, the pedestrian underpass there. But every time I look at, I mean, that is the bottleneck going into town. And if there was a way to somehow make the Burlingame intersection and the Buttermilk intersection and a pedestrian underpass all fit into some sort of, infrastructure that would eliminate some of that backlog there, I think that would be a really, that's something that our community could get behind. It's really difficult to get the people in Aspen to deal with the straight shot or anything else having to do with traffic because they're not sitting in it, but we are. So I think those are the types of projects the EOTC should be working towards that are a little more, maybe it's politically easier to get at the Buttermilk intersection than it would be the straight shot in Aspen.
Right. Something I did want to go back to that you mentioned, Marky, was the interaction between the three different bodies. And ideas or experiences you may have had over the years that could help promote that interaction. Something I've noticed is that there is, as far as I know, the EOTC is the only time that the three bodies all get together.
That's true.
And you know, there's, I think, different ways of tackling that. And I'm curious to know whether there's been anything done in the past that might, you know, help that relationship, or at least help focus the conversation and agendas when we do have an EOTC meeting, if that makes sense.
Who
I
wants to talk about the $500,000 deal?
I just think that there's a lot of big personalities, different personalities. I know for myself, like, I think there's too much talking at those meetings, like repetitive talking, people saying the same thing, the person next to them. I mean, I generally don't want to say something that the three people in front of me have said. Obviously, like at the one meeting when we were, you know, talking about service to Snowmass, like we were all very passionate about it, and so we all chimed in to sort of put our lasting impressions on the rest of the people that were there. But I do think that maybe encouraging some of those, each entity to not necessarily have a point person, but just to sort of consolidate the thoughts before the meeting, because I think that would help a lot. I mean, obviously, some things only come up in the meeting, and then you feel like you have to, you know, say something about them. But I don't know. That's kind of my impression. There's a lot of repetitive talking.
I think it's what you just mentioned is the same thing I heard several times from the commissioners as well.
Yeah.
And an idea that got thrown out there that I wanted to get feedback on.
They're the ones that do all the talking. Sorry, guys.
Don't laugh.
If you're watching.
That's your job. Keep a straight face because you work for all three. You can't play favorites. Sorry.
Laugh with everybody.
Yeah.
I've already told them, so that's.
Was the thinking was that bringing the three groups together more often was just schedule-wise too difficult, and that the 3 to 4 times per year was the max that we could really achieve with the full attendance. From my perspective as an employee, a feedback loop of only 3 to 4 months that's big spacing, and that creates some inefficiencies on my part. And you know, I want to make sure that the money that's going toward my salary is actually going toward being spent efficiently and well. So an idea that came up was creating a working group so 2 members from each of the boards that I would meet with monthly or bi-monthly, depending on how much is actually going on, to be able to discuss the topics that are at hand, what's coming up the next meeting. So I could get feedback from you in terms of, yes, you need to be going in this direction. Our board will definitely not go for this, or there's an issue here. We need to talk about this with the whole group, and I could come before you. You know, if it's, say, a city of Aspen is not okay with it, but you guys are, I could just go talk to the city of Aspen, or however that may play out. So that was a way that we could keep that feedback loop going, as well as hopefully bringing that information back to the full boards on a more incremental basis, and not have to try to bring all of the groups together and try to fight that scheduling battle. So yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Pretty good idea.
I also think too, I mean, since I've been on council, I've never seen us do sort of any like visioning exercises with the EOTC.
Oh, we did one.
We did one Snowmass.
When there's one budgeted for next year.
Maybe I wasn't here, but I feel like that is also really helpful because everyone just sorts to have a reminder of
Was it the Snowmass
why we're
one?
there and what's happening.
We had a retreat at the firehouse in Aspen, probably 3 years ago. And Peacock led the whole discussion, did a fabulous job. And unfortunately, it didn't come out with a great outcome. Part of the issue was this lockbox issue.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, it was, if we're gonna do it again, that needs to be well-planned. I agree with you,
Right.
but it needs to be
Well, and I
well-planned.
feel like because the Aspen council mayor stuff's gonna change, you know, in the upcoming election and, you know, just new people coming in and out, I feel like it really might be helpful.
Right.
I don't know, to everybody, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really important to just identify projects and prioritize them. And that way we can really kind of stay on task.
Right.
Great.
And that is another thing that I've heard, is that having a prioritized task, or list of projects, and I would really like to have that as well. Because that would allow me then to say, okay, this grant opportunity is coming up, this is on our list, I can move forward on that. And it's kind of like a capital improvements list, if you will.
Right.
But the idea of visioning, that was, you're hitting all my major topics on my list. With the retreat, you know, what are you looking to get out of it? And what I've heard is the visioning piece. We really want to have that vision that reflects the OTC's values in order to then move it forward to say, are we, on the scale of infrastructure to programming, where are we falling based on this vision and these values? And then from there, creating a project list that's reflective back on those items. So that's the feedback I've got, and that's kind of what I have in my head right now. And yeah, open to conversation in terms of
That would
what
be
you may
good.
think of that. I am looking at starting conversations with some facilitators for the retreat here in the next few weeks. If you've got any ideas for facilitators, that would be good to have. I've got a list of about 6. I didn't bring the list with me here, unfortunately.
Clint, you probably have some.
David Peckler.
No, there's some very good facilitators.
I'm sure we can work,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think just listening, before we kind of committed to the one-off committee, not one-off, that steering committee idea,
Yeah.
I think it'd be great if it happened, if that idea came out of the retreat. I mean, personally, I think that's step one. Set some goals, set some critical initiatives that need to be reached or met, or at least progress made. And that way you know where we're going. I've only been here 4 years, and I don't remember the meeting that you talked about, but.
It was before you came. We
but I-
were in.
So it's more than 4
Suda days.
years. Then-
Yes, it
but
was
I-
before me.
I've heard the horror stories of years before where the meetings were 3 and 4 hours long and not a lot of decisions made. And so I think at least in my short time here, there's been a lot of progress to where, yeah, they're still long, but at the end, there's generally a decision, there's generally consensus, and we know the direction that each individual board is going to vote when those resolutions come back. So I think that's a very good thing, and however we continue to make sure that happens, so that the staff doesn't get stuck in some kind of do loop, I would want to make sure we protect that so that you're not stuck saying, well, wait, we had 2 out of 3 now, and not 3 out of 3.
I would hope that not only do we talk about the vision, but also the mission of EOTC and the values.
Well, I think we're fortunate in that the RAFTA tax passed because the idea is that we're supposed to be funding projects as opposed to operations. And we were kind of headed down that road if we didn't, get some additional funding. So I think we're fortunate in that regard, but
But they still take the same percentage for RAFTA at the top. Still the 81 cents.
But I would
I
say,
think-
Bill, that's one person's perception that we should be doing capital, not operations. I think that's one of those things
That's one of those.
the EOTC can discuss about, should it be operational or more capital? It's a fair discussion. But that's a good example of that opinion's been said a lot, but I'm not sure it's an official position of the EOTC.
And I think there's 2 things you just always remember. There's the fair subsidy so that the service is free to the user between Aspen and Snowmass and Woody Creek, and that's like $650,000. But then there was the $400,000 to run the 15-minute service in the spring, summer, fall. So they're 2 different things. RAFTA has said that the 15-minute service will be subsidized out of the property tax, the mill levy that was passed. So that's a savings to the EOTC and adds to the capital fund or whatever fund you want to call
There are
it.
some people that already have their eyes on that.
Probably.
And if I might just add one more idea, I mean, the idea that we could have a unified voice at RAFTA from the EOTC, because not all the time does Pickens County and Aspen and Snowmass Village line up down there. A lot of the time we do, most of the time I would say we do. But having a unified voice and that moderate, whatever that looks like, I think is very valuable to bring back.
Okay. And in terms of the working group idea, I'm not expecting any kind of decisions here today.
Okay.
I just wanted to float the idea, see what you thought, if it was absolutely a game stopper or it was kind of lukewarm, or where we were falling there.
Yeah.
And at the next EOTC meeting, I would like to have another conversation about it with the full group. And then at that point, make the decision whether you want to postpone a final decision until retreat, or you feel comfortable making that decision there. That would be the kind of decision I'd be looking for at the next EOTC meeting.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, of
When
course.
is the next meeting?
David, quick question.
March 21st.
Are you responsible for the agendas for the EOTC, or in between meetings, are you selecting all of your topics now?
I am. I've got a running list for the
Okay,
March 21st,
so
which is way too long.
With that being said, our next EOTC meeting is in March, and maybe we could have some insight on what's going to be on that agenda a little earlier than Dave's orientation to us on a Monday night before that Thursday. You know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, we would know, so we could give some feedback before that.
Yeah, that's my goal, is at least 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not comfortable with the 1 week out.
Right.
Obviously, if, sometimes it just happens that way.
You know,
Hopefully it
between
doesn't.
ourselves and Aspen Council, and I'm sure the county commissioners, we get packets that are 465 pages long, and then all of a sudden, we have the EOTC package coming in on the same Monday, and it's very difficult sometimes to prepare.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is an update on coffee, the coffee project. You guys need a 3-minute break?
These guys probably need 2 minutes to get the.
I'm okay.
He said they need 2 minutes to get.
Oh, 2 minutes?
2 minutes?
Do we need it? Maybe.
90 seconds.
90
Okay,
seconds.
It's enough for
countdown
me to
started.
get a grape.
I was so upset when I
So we have Jim here tonight.
Hello, Mark.
Yeah, good to see ya.
The first one was. That's it? That's all you need?
See, the first thing we'll have to do is go to the country and then it's stuff. I'm gonna run to the restroom.
Okay. I guess they're gonna take 2 minutes. Are they taking 2 minutes?
I don't know, are we taking a break?
Somebody needs to decide.
Are we taking one, Marky? No,
No.
We're rolling.
No,
90 seconds?
Stretching. I was taking time.
we're good.
They said it was 90 seconds.
Oh, perfect.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Betsy,
How are you?
ya?
Long time no see.
Isn't that the
Very
truth?
well. Do you want me just to jump in? So I'm here tonight with 2 folks from Charles Cuniff Architects to update you all on where we are on the Coffee Place development, which is the next phase of development in the Rodeo Place neighborhood. You'll recall that for several years we've been looking at some of the sites down there, as well as the Seven Star site for potential development. And a couple years ago, we engaged CCA architects to do a schematic plan, and that's been, I think, talked about with you as well as with the local neighborhood quite a bit of times. And you've also set aside just approximately $3.3 million in funding to subsidize the development down there. Earlier this year, we did a RFP, one of those RF processes to secure an architect, interviewed 3 different architectural firms, and did select CCA to provide our full architectural services, including through construction. Adding to the team is SGM is doing our engineering services, and HP Kumar has done our geotechnical work to date and will continue with us. We've been working as a team for the last few months to try to get it from a very early schematic state to something a little bit more ready to start a local permitting process. And we have found out through the process of the surveys and the wetlands and the soil testing and so forth that there are constraints on that site that weren't necessarily anticipated in the original schematic, but nevertheless, we're ready to move forward at this point in the early months of 2019 with a permitting and design process. And what we're looking at currently is putting 18 new units on the site, including some in duplexes and some in single-family homes. 6 will be duplexes, and then we have 12 new single-family homes that will range in size from about 2,500 square feet on the single families to about just over 3,100, just over 3,000 square feet, all with 3 bedrooms, including one that will be fully ADA accessible.
Homes.
Pardon me?
A
Yeah,
pretty
good
nice size.
Well, it includes garages.
Oh,
That number does
okay,
include
okay.
garages. They'll also be designed to be congruent with the surrounding neighborhood in size, scale, massing, design. And we want to also respect the nearby, especially on the southern part of the site, recreational, well, really throughout the environmental beauty of the site. So our team is looking, we did actually just have a pre-application meeting last week to sort of get the process started. We're looking to take it to full application or to the formal application in the next few months. And we are also we're planning right now a meeting with the neighbors, the community down there tentatively for January 8th at this point. We also hope to bring a contractor into the process fairly early on so we can get some really real-life live numbers to our design. So a couple things I'll just mention that have kind of guided us throughout. One is that that the community that we're building, like the community that's already there, serve a range of incomes and household configurations. So we're doing 2 and 3 bedroom homes, and the range, we're sort of doing a back of the envelope to look to the 200s and 300,000 in that price range, maybe as high as 500,000 for the largest units, but to be in that range of 250, 275 to 500,000, which is what we have down there right now. We're looking at that segment of the market that's not really currently able to buy a home right now in Snowmass Village, so I think it does fit a huge need and a demand that's in our community now. And we are also looking and assuming that the subsidy that's been allotted to this project is a subsidy that will be allotted, that we won't be coming back for additional subsidy. So it's really too early kind of to talk about any hard numbers other than that range that we're talking about, but I did ask Jim Keogh and Chad Mulcony from CCA to come and show you where we're at with this, to give you a sense of the planning and the design and how we're gonna tuck in, my favorite term, tuck some units in over there, and where we think we can get to about 18 new homes there. So I think with that, I'll just let them run through the slides they have.
Thank you, Marky. Jim Kehoe with Charles Cuniff Architects.
Chad Mulcony, Charles Cuniff Architects.
Thank you for having us. We've started this project a couple of years ago on the concept phase, and jumped in very directly after the selection process. So we've been working hard getting the information from SGM that will provide the detailed technical information to really hone in on these lots. And we are at that point. We have honed in, and I'm going to go right to left. This is the 7-star lot. This is very quickly. This is a building envelope that was developed for a single-family home. Knowing the constraints of that site with wetlands and steep slopes, we are within the limits of the buildable area that was developed for 7-star, which is a plus. And we have a 18-foot driveway into these 6 units. These units are tucked into the hillside. This unit is, the scale of it is, it has a loft. It's not a two-story unit. These are all two-story units. Jumping down here off Stallion Circle, adjacent to the tennis courts, we have 4 single families on lots with a driveway connecting them all, and then 2 single families that are 1 story. These are 2 stories. These are 1 story, directly coming off the road. We're very cognizant of the neighborhood, the lay of the land, the views, and we're being sensitive to the character that's there today. And very directly related to that is fitting in the infill here of 6 duplexes right there along a row that currently has duplexes along there. There's two here, and then they single there, and so forth. So that is the lay of the land from the standpoint of the site plan. And just very briefly, walking around the site, these buildings have scale. These are in very early stages of development, just amassing. If you go back real quickly, this is the left view on the next slide, and this is the right view. So you can see this is Stallion Circle. There's actually a horseback rider right there. And then this is the wetlands, and bridging over the wetlands to the development up in the 7-star area. The other development we don't have a 3D of would be a continuation of these units, which are the duplexes. Want to make mention that compatibility, size, scale, materiality is all on the table, and it's an underscored approach to this project to make it fit in a much seamless fashion. Very briefly, these are the floor plans. This is the 1-story off Stallion. This is the smaller single 2-story unit, though we've popped up the roof. We've kept the roof low, not a true 2-story. It's just a lofted space. And then these are the 4 single families that are adjacent to the tennis courts. And then a view of the duplexes, much like they are today. We're making improvements. We are looking at the buildings and the sense of materials and so forth. We really think that solar panels, as much as possible, should be a part of the equation, as much as the budget will allow. The offset there is good for PV. High efficiency boilers, and then we're looking at new products that have come online since the last time you did housing, and we're looking at low to no maintenance materials. What's on the buildings now is hardy board. You do have to paint hardy board. The industry has come out with numerous products that we will bid as ad alternates and pick one that fits the budget. And we're across the board, we're hearing everyone does not want to have maintenance on their buildings. There's a sustainability aspect to that, obviously. Windows, high efficiency U-value windows as well. And then landscaping, there's a lot of lawns in that area. Trying to balance natural, no maintenance landscaping is very important. We're starting to do that more and more. Single family homes, public projects around the state. And this is the closing slide, just to give you a re-look at the overall. Questions?
Well, and let me just add a couple things just to underscore. We're looking at unlike the existing rodeo place, there will likely be some common elements. Some of these roads that come off of Stallion Circle to serve driveways. The driveways that come off of Stallion Circle will actually be community, it will be commonly owned and not town-owned roads, but be commonly owned driveway spaces that will need to be maintained. And that, so our intent is that there will be a, at least currently as we're looking at it, an HOA that is separate and distinct from the rodeo, the current rodeo HOA, and will function as their own legal entity. You know, we're still sort of working that out, but it's, the current rodeo homeowners have virtually no common elements, and that creates some independence that I think this new one will have its own, will have some need to be together as a unit.
And they have dissolved their HOA, the rodeo?
The existing rodeo place, our understanding is that they voted to dissolve their separate HOA
And join this.
in favor of the townwide HOA.
So Betsy, I have a question maybe
Sure.
for John as well, and then have we contacted CORE at all for any help? Because CORE they would love a project like this, they love big ideas. They want to electrify everything as opposed to high-efficiency boilers. So I think it's worthwhile to bring CORE into the picture.
Yeah, I'm sorry you didn't mention that. Before we even put pen to paper, we were in discussion with CORE.
Okay.
And I've met with them twice now.
Met with Marty and at all, or?
Yes, the
Okay,
whole
great.
crew, yes. And
I've met
Betsy
with the
has
director
met
there.
with them and,
Mona.
and
Yeah.
Right.
Mona
she's
as
great.
well. And we are on their radar, and this is a very interesting project for them.
They're looking for big ideas, and this is a big idea for them, and they would love this.
Yes.
And they also, you know, they're really interested in getting involved now, sort of at the
This is when
the
they need
earlier
to
the
be
better.
involved, right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
Correct.
so Mona is very aware of this project, so.
And we give her updates, and at the right time, they'll pull the
Great.
trigger on funding.
This is a perfect time, because they're involved in the basalt housing project down there, the affordable
High
housing,
school one.
I think for mostly school teachers.
Well, it's school, yeah.
Right, again, they're electrifying the whole place. So they're not, even though I'm a big fan of natural gas, they're not, even though I'm on the CORE board. I fight with them on that, but still, the high-efficiency boilers are good, but if we could get CORE involved, I think it's going to be worthwhile for the whole town and the community.
Fully agree.
Looks good.
What's the demand for the ADA units?
You know, we haven't had in our past a ton of demand. That's why we have one. One of the intentions, one of the things we would like to accommodate with this is downsizing and, you know, people who may need to age in place. We do have some people who have children who have ADA needs. So you know, it doesn't need to be reserved and set aside and held forever, but we wanted to have one that would be available if somebody were to, you know, want to downsize, let's say from the crossings, and wanted to have something all on one level, or where they could live on one level over time, or if we had somebody, you know, somebody who works for Challenge Aspen, or some of the folks who do have disability needs. Most of the units have a grade level bedroom, but this is the only one that has living space at grade, I believe, or the only one. The type B also does, okay.
The laundry is downstairs.
Yeah, this one would be fully, like, you, with a disability, you could live here without difficulty.
It just seems that the units that we do set up for people with disabilities end up going to people that aren't disabled.
You know, you don't ever want to hold a unit empty, you know, and wait for somebody to have that demand. But we do in our rental housing have people who will over time need to transfer to a more accessible unit, and we do accommodate that. So we don't have a huge number, but it's, you know, it's.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when they come up in lottery, those units, there's a priority.
Yeah, we
for
hold.
folks that
we
have
have
that need, so.
We have a priority actually in our regulations for people with disabilities too.
And is that a significant list?
No, it hasn't been in my time. You know, I have been here 6, 8 months, and I haven't seen a demand come for that. But
But we feel it's still necessary to build to accommodate?
I personally think, you know, it's a, I mean, just from my personal place I come from, I've worked with people who have disabilities and who, you know, today don't have that need and tomorrow could, because they fall wrong or because they have a diagnosis that requires it. You know, I think it's sort of a community accommodation, and as people age as well, you know, this is workforce housing, but you can, if you've lived here for 10 years, you can retire here. And I think having some ground, you know, single level living possibility is a great thing for people, even who don't have disabilities, but who just are getting older.
But if you have an ADA unit and there isn't anyone, like you build this one and there's anyone that needs it, and you can give it to just
We're
anybody.
gonna fill it. We'll fill it with
Right,
somebody.
but then
yeah.
a person come along that needs it, but those people end up living in that house for 25 years. It just seems a little mismatched.
It is, and it's a timing issue, but if you don't build it, then it's never available in the first place, and it's a, like.
That's one of
it's
the
a-
big complaints
it's a
that I
timing
hear from
issue,
people
and
that live
it's-
down valley that are disabled, is you can't, there aren't any places here in Snowmass.
Our
in
rental
Orchard.
housing, while not necessarily a lot of it tagged as ADA, we have a lot of single-story housing in our rental portfolio. And we have a lot of people who, well, not a lot, we have a number of folks who have either mobility impairment,
Right.
breathing, you know, sort of, I'm not sure what the correct term for that is, but
They live on an oxygen.
live on oxygen.
concentrator.
It's hypoxia, thank you. Or even people, well, you know, people with other sorts of disabilities who are looking for, or have children, you know, who they need to accommodate. So it's, like I said, we wouldn't hold it aside. Honestly, where I come from, it's 10% requirement in the building code. We don't have that code out here so much, but I think it's, and we manage it by, you know, reserving it in the initial lease up. And then as people come up on the list, we can, in the case of homeownership, we wouldn't move people around, but in our rental housing, we manage it as people come up on the list, we move them in. So it's going to be honestly, it's a great home for anybody.
The
think it's the right
design of
thing to do.
the home, if it comes up on the lottery and it's not fully finished, it's adaptable, whether it goes fully ADA oriented in design and construction, or it just gets finished out without the details, but it's been designed with the clearances needed, so the countertops and the various things could change
Doorways.
over time, or somebody wants it, that needs it, and buys it, it can be finished out with the ADA requirements.
The biggest difference is turning radius for is a little bit larger for wheelchairs to come into the, you know, the common areas in the bathrooms, kitchens.
How many, is there just one now
Just
in
one.
rodeo?
One,
The existing.
there aren't any in rodeo currently.
Crossing.
Oh, is there one?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
isn't there one?
There's
Okay.
one.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
my bad.
No, it's okay.
And it's occupied by a qualified person.
I don't know.
Well, it is.
Okay, thank you.
They received a priority based on disability,
Got
and they
it.
continue to live there.
Great. That's wonderful. I had another question too. Or did you have more questions?
I just had one
Oh,
more
go ahead.
question. Since this is a recreation area, I think it's obviously going to impact the trails. Have you looked at an alignment for 7-Star and also for the horseback riding?
Yes, we've done and circulated and have had a comment on an exhibit for trail rerouting, and we've had communication with the rec center, and there are some other entities that we will be meeting with as well. So yes, that
We
is
got a
on,
good idea, but it's not solved yet, but it's on the radar to be dealt with.
and there are options.
So it might, 7-Star might go through their front yard.
Yes.
Well, maybe it's.
Front yard, yes, not backyard.
It looks like in that
Jim, can you maybe show where
upper
eyeballs?
left-hand corner,
Can you show where 7-Star eyeballs?
yeah.
That's Seven Star.
Yeah, no, the
Right,
trail.
but where the trail,
Well,
That's the horse trail.
it's right here, and we're rerouting it around the road here. And then there's a little maneuvering over here that we're gonna do as well, around the corner. So, I think that's it right there. So, we're modifying the locations of those trails.
But that's a good example of, we wanted to get this project in front of you just to say, hey, here's the big picture we're aiming for, the number of units. There's a tremendous amount of detail still to come that we're working through, that you'll see, you guys will see it. It's a little odd in that you're the owner and you're also sitting as a quasi-judicial process a little later. So we're trying to find that balance. But no, those details are on the radar. We don't have a good answer tonight. But this is obviously more of an ownership review for you guys to make sure that the overall project is within the idea that you thought. The densities kind of look okay as far as owners go. You guys can do a more thorough review when the project comes through the land use review. As far as ownership in the council goes, I want to make sure you heard Betsy say that, we're aiming for early January 8th for a neighborhood meeting. We'll see what kind of input we get that night. I'm sure it'll be robust. And I would imagine we'll have some kind of meeting with you afterwards as ownership, as council, to, hear that and let us, react to some of the stuff. And then, and then I know we've just started the official land use review as well. So you'll see it dual paths coming at you. And that is one topic that we'll be addressing.
I think it looks great. You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. About, it has to do with that whole thing with the Horse Ranch HOA and the duplexes. And
We've removed them.
great.
right, but has there been any further discussion
No.
about? Okay,
I think what would be great is it'll be so beautiful, and we'll do such a great job that they'll just be bowled over by, and want us to just extend
Come
it
to our
right
HOA
out.
meeting.
I knew
You'll
you
hear a
were- I
different
should have
side
let
of
you
it.
finish your sentence. You were going to say, has there been further discussion about further buffering, is what I assume you were going to say.
Well, no, because we just randomly this week got our HOA minutes from August, and they mentioned this in there, and so I was just curious.
I will say that when I spoke to you all in October, there were several people from the HOA here who
Yes.
did speak with me out, after the meeting, and expressed their desire to see some buffering similar to what they see at the crossings. That was their desire. It's
Yeah. Well, because in the notes that I got from them, it said significant change of substance to allow for development as well as approval from all abutting homeowners. I don't know what that means. Like, I wasn't at the meeting because it was on the same night as the council meeting.
I don't know what that means either, but we're not on originally, if you remember, there were a number of units
Oh,
still on
yeah.
their property.
Yes.
And it was
They're
made
gone.
very clear to us that's not going to be allowed for, so we've gone back to our property. And so if they're referring back to an original plan where there were a number of units on their property, absolutely. Now that we're staying on town-owned property, I'm not sure that's 100% accurate. Of course, buffering's important. It's their land at that point, though, so they'd have to, allow for something on their land. But again, that's why we're starting this. The 8th will be an opportunity to hear from everybody, and then, of course, you'll have public hearings, which you can hear from folks as well.
And they may be, if that was back in August, that was, they may be working off of the plans that were still up on our website that showed
Yeah.
those extra 4 duplexes coming out. This is all on town-owned land, so I'm not
Yes,
sure where the
yeah.
jurisdiction is.
I just didn't know if there'd been further discussion.
Just out in the parking lot with those
Okay,
guys.
looks good.
Okay, thank you.
Betsy.
All right.
Good to see
Thank you.
you. Chad, come back. Jim, I'm
Thank you,
sure we'll be
guys.
seeing you guys. But I can see there's been some hard work put in on this already. Good work. Next is town council reports and actions. And before we go into town council reports and actions, I want to thank all of you for being at our wonderful groundbreaking. It wasn't groundbreaking, but
Opening.
beautiful
Ribbon
party
cutting?
Saturday night. It was quite lovely. So do you have any takeaways? Any
No,
takeaways?
It was not a surprise. I wasn't surprised to see that many people. I think the community and the whole valley came out. And there were, of course, people coming from wherever they were to enjoy it. But I think for the most part, I'm going to say most of the people in Roaring Fork Valley came up. I mean, I didn't stick around for the final ice skating show and saw the pictures and saw the fireworks from a distance, but my gosh, it was a great party.
Well, I was surprised. I mean, I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I thought, to a person that I spoke to, everybody was pretty blown away. Nobody knew what to expect. I mean, I walked my daughter up the stairway, and she stood there for 5 minutes looking around like, where am I? She could not figure it. She just couldn't get oriented. But it was, it was a really great atmosphere. People were excited. If that project would have gone forward in 2004, it would have been a much different.
Yep. I walked around a lot, and, I walked up to the stage watching the band, then I came back and walked through Four Mountain Sports, and it's like there were different personalities going on in the plaza. There was the Rock Fest going on up above where the concert was, and that was elbow to elbow people, and then you come through, and they were ice skating, and it was really, it was pretty neat to see that many different things going on at once. And not even counting about going into the limelight, which was, you couldn't even find a spot to stand or anything. But the vibrancy, and it looked like that's what we wanted.
Yeah, I guess the thing that really made an impression on me was that it is like a little stadium. I just kind of had the impression it was going to be a lot flatter, but as you looked out at the crowd, I mean, there was clearly like 3 different levels. And there were a lot of people that could get around that rink, and people loved the ice skating. It was great.
Do you have any?
I was really surprised at the number of people. I mean, I just, maybe because it's early season and, it's mostly you're leaving it up to locals to be there, and there's lots of competing interests. So I was really surprised. I've gotten lots of feedback, really nice compliments from people. And I would say, since really my first time on council, this is the first big project that we worked on. And so to go up and see it and feel the energy and see all of our hard work in play really was an incredible feeling. And I really am just so happy that Building 6, collective building, is not dark. I think that makes a huge difference, and I think if it did sit dark this whole winter, there'd be a way different feel on the plaza. So, the fact that there's activity going on in there, and all sorts of activity, I think adds a huge element to what's going on down there. I have a lot of friends that live on the other side of the roundabout that are like, this will get me to come to Snowmass more, which I think is really cool. I will also say I thought the transportation, I told Dave when I saw him on Sunday that the transportation I thought went really well that night. It didn't, I got on a bus to and from rodeo, and it was really easy, and just a lot of people to move around, and you see how everything sort of works. So yeah, I was super impressed.
It was really something.
Yeah.
Town staff have to be thanked for all their hard work as well.
Yeah, we are very.
Looking at, when some of us had the opportunity to stay for the soft opening of the Limelight, and looking around how much work they had to do for the week before. I don't know how Andy and Will got it done, but my gosh, they did a fabulous job, and it looked like it was there for a while. The pop-ups in
The collective?
collective building, I was a little surprised to see all that. It was. By the way, how long will that be going on?
Well, it changes.
Through the holidays, they're doing those holiday pop-ups.
Yeah, then you'll see the January schedule. If you don't have the schedule, it's been published.
Yeah.
I've got the
They
full
have their
schedule.
own website.
The short answer to your question is through New Year's Eve, and after that, there's more coming. This will
coming.
be by far the most active.
So
these 2 weeks are the most heavily programmed.
In that building, what are the hours that a person can come and shop?
Right now, it's noon to 6, I believe.
Okay.
We even have a furniture store in there.
Right.
I mean, I loved it. Some lady designed my interior decorating there.
If I was a better manager, I could tell you the website. I believe it's collective.com.
Collective, yeah, Collective.
They can tell you all the hours, all the events, everything that's going on there.
And if you have ideas for who to bring in, get a hold of Sue or Don. They're taking, I'm reaching out to some entities.
No, I
to get it
think
there.
it went very well.
It's the collectivesnowmass.com.
It's cool.
It's amazing to look at stuff on paper and try to visualize it, and then to actually go there. It's a really different experience. I mean, I was really impressed with Building 6. It's open, it's airy. It would have been a great museum, but it's going to be a great collective.
I like the shopping. I thought that was novel.
I'm glad my wife was hurt and didn't come up because it would have cost me a bundle.
It would have, because there's some nice stuff in there.
She's got
No,
2
but
weeks.
she gets back on her feet, she wants to come up, so be careful.
Yeah, take your whole wallet. No, it was great, and to everyone in East West and R.A. Nilsson, all the subs, oh my goodness. Job well done. Okay, and we're gonna move on to the FCC ruling making changes, and there's a letter that was in your packet on page 431. Clint, you wanna walk us through this very quickly?
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Circus called late last week. He attended a Northwest COG meeting. As you see in the letter, the Northwest COG has drafted a letter to our congressional delegation asking them to intercede, I guess, probably not the right word, but certainly interact with the FCC to ensure they don't take away some of our franchise fees. We don't know exactly what the rules look like, but this is a preemptive strike to make sure the delegation knows where we stand. Ken Fellman, who helped the town of Snowmass Village through our last franchise agreement, is leading the legal effort for Northwest COG. It makes total sense for us to sign on to it. So on behalf of Councilor Circus, I think we'd recommend that we authorize the mayor, that you all authorize the mayor to execute this letter.
Are you all comfortable with it?
I'm in favor of it.
I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with it, yes.
Okay, let's move forward and execute the letter then, Clint. Does anyone have any updates, reports?
I don't.
I had a RAFTA board meeting and a public health board meeting last week. I won't go through all the detail, the RAFTA, but it's primarily to approve the tax, that whole issue of tax and how it's gonna be handled. I don't know all the legal terms for it, but y'all know what I mean. Yeah, so that's basically it.
I actually had a core meeting talking about the 25th anniversary of CORE, but I wasn't able to attend at the last minute, and I'll get briefed on next week with Mona about it.
You got anything, Bill?
As your alternative, let me know if you can't make any, and I'll
Well,
stand
yeah,
in.
this was kind of sudden. I thought about calling you, but it was all of a sudden in the morning, I found out I couldn't go.
It's no problem.
Melissa?
Well, Bob attended the last Northwest
Yes.
COG meeting for me, but two other things I just wanted to mention. One is that I think the lights at the new ice skate rink down below at Rodeo are really nice. And I was just curious if we've had any sort of feedback from homeowners about the lighting.
Not to
'Cause
my
I know
knowledge.
people complained a lot when they were the other lights.
These are 1/10 or less of
Right.
the impact. So to my knowledge, I've asked the same question, and it was last week when I last asked, and as of last week, we hadn't. I probably just jinxed it by saying that, but to date, we have not received anything negative about it.
Well, I've gotten a lot of people are like, oh, it's so cool, it's sort of its own little
That's what I heard
space,
too.
and
It looks festive down there. They look
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
holiday lights.
yeah,
I
it's
think it
really,
looks cool.
it does. And I walked down there the other day, it was really nice. It's really nice. My other question is about, and maybe Bill knows, but about maybe you don't, about the Labrador Lane that goes along the golf course. They've rerouted it again, and I think it's really nice, but I think the signage is really poor, because you get to the point where you have to cross Owl Creek and get on the multi-use trail, and unless you've looked at a map, it's not really clear that you're supposed to do that, and it's also not clear where you get back on. And when you do get back on by Fairway 3, there's no signage saying that's Labrador Lane. There is further down, but
Oh.
it's just the signage isn't great. And I don't want people getting on the wrong trail and then having other people yell at them. So as we get more visitors, it might be useful to just have some additional signage. And then also too with the transportation, and parking, I mean, really parking. I've noticed the last 2 weeks that a lot of visitors are parking in the Black Saddle lot because the other lots are full, and they're then having to walk from Black Saddle to the bus. And I am just wondering why that's happening. Is that normal?
And when we're busy, it's normal. I mean, that's the last overflow lot.
So-
And the other thing is Two Creek hasn't been open, so I don't know.
Well, it was open this last weekend,
So I can't
and it was
speak to
still
this.
happening.
I mean, it's
A lot
a
of people don't
function
know
of
Two Creeks
cars.
is open.
So Clint, by the way, what's happening with the fire tent?
Yeah.
Let me just, so.
Is that gonna be
is-
valet parking now or
Oh.
something?
I mean, so that tent is owned by the fire district, fire district. It will remain by the fire district. Their hope was to get it removed by the beginning of the season. A longer story short, their last sale fell through, and so they offered to take it down and lose money, and it was gonna be I'll just say a $40,000 expense, or, loss of revenue. And we said, you know what, we'd rather you save, as a fire district, as a fellow government, go ahead and save the money, keep it for sale, and when you can remove it, do, but we're not gonna force you to remove it right away. So they're actively trying to get rid of it,
Just curious if there's any update on it.
but yeah, they haven't, to my knowledge, in the last week, they haven't got it sold. They're trying to. I don't know anything about removing tents. I understand it's a lot harder in the winter than in the summer, so it might be there all winter. And again, we took the pressure off, saying, please be active in trying to sell it, but we understand that you're doing the best you can. And, but no, we're not planning on using it.
I thought maybe you're gonna do some valet parking indoors.
We looked at, we've got the dam project going on down there, and we looked at letting the contractor in there, and that didn't even work out
Well,
really well.
I mean, my question with the parking is there construction parking that's happening at Rodeo, which is taking up more spots, and visitors are then forced to go park at Black Saddle?
We think there's some of that, and we have a construction meeting with them at least once a week, and we're working our best to make sure they're aware of that and that we're watching it, and yeah, we think that's part of the problem. That's not all of it, though.
Right.
But yeah, those are things that we continue to work through. When they had this mad rush these last 10 days, we think that's a lot of that issue. But I can't sit here and say now that they're going to be less employees up there working, that it's going to be solved. But we think that is a factor for sure, and we're working with the contractors to. Their construction management plan mandates that they come from the intercept lot, and we know there's been some violations of that, and we've allowed that to be a little lax as they finish up this last little push, but they also know that flexibility is gone.
Thank you.
Well, we also talked at EOTC about having a sign on 82 that told people, or we would have the option to say, rodeo lot full.
Full.
Right. And that's when David Pesnicek, that's gonna be one of his projects, to get that up and going and make sure the language on that is right, and that's a great idea or a example of a project that's fallen through the cracks because no individual organizations picked it up, and now we can place it on the EOTC staff, which is him, and get that going forward.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
But to answer your question, it's demand, and I mean, if that's just,
And the
it's a
snow's
good problem to have.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okey dokey. So we're going on to the next agenda item, which is an executive session. Town council will now meet.
Madam Mayor, can I throw
Yeah.
one more top? So we have one more good problem to bring up to your attention. Boards and commission applications have been coming in. We've got 3 boards right now that have more applicants than we do positions open.
What a great problem.
So I'd like to, Rhonda and I can get with you maybe later this week, and as a mayor, you can kind of guide us through how you'd want to, at least a process, or if the council wants to talk about a process. But in years past, this is not something we've had to deal with, and so you guys will have to decide whether you want to interview or how you'd want to proceed with this.
Is there one that doesn't have enough?
Most of them. I mean, 8 out of 11 don't, and 3 out of 11, and I totally made the 11 up, or have more applicants than. and positions open.
When those people do their application, do they indicate if they'd be willing to serve on any other board besides the one they're applying for?
Yeah.
They can mark as many as they want, and the X is on the top.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's one of those things that we want to, obviously, we understand the council wants to continue to encourage participation. We don't want to discourage anybody.
Right.
And so I need to get with you and understand the
Yeah,
process
so
you want to get
one,
going.
one
through.
more item too. I had sent you and Rhonda an email. I don't remember the name of Aspen did this. They ran a course, a government course in Aspen for a couple of years. I don't remember the name of it, but I could find out. And basically, it's like introducing government to citizens, and it also got people interested in joining boards and possibly running for council or mayor or whatever. And it was very successful from my understanding, and I'm wondering if we could do the same thing.
School board's just doing something like that.
What's that?
The school board is doing something like that right now.
It was a sort of a
CML does.
government kind of
Yeah.
class that.
CML will do those types of things.
Yeah, I mean,
It's easy.
I think you sent that late last week, and I'm sorry not getting back to you on that, but yeah, if the council says, hey, let's go get that done, I think that would be one of those reaching out. I mean, you guys have said community engagement's
Right.
an important thing. If that's a tool you want to do,
I'll find out more about it, because I've actually talked to somebody who took the course twice, and they just loved it.
and any hesitation you hear in my voice is I know they've got a full-time staff person dedicated to that. And so I just want you to recognize the resources that takes.
Right.
And if you say we
No,
recognize
I
it and do it,
understand that. I totally understand.
that's my only hesitation when I'm not saying, yes,
And
let's do
that
it.
course wasn't open to just Aspen citizens, it was open to the community.
But I think those are the kind of things that we can say, can we shorten it down? Can we do something more impactful? Yeah, those are the kind of ideas we need to be jumping on.
Is it possible for you to send us an email with the ones that haven't gotten enough so that we can talk to people in the community about applying for those?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll get you an update on the whole score sheet, where
That'd be
everybody's at.
helpful.
And we're aiming for January 7th, Ron, is for like the initial, and so that's why we just need to understand how we want to address those other boards.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Town council will now meet in executive session pursuant to CRS 2464-024 and Snowmass Village Municipal Code Section 245C to specifically discuss and/or consider two items. Seconds here. Oops. Determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing and negotiators pursuant to CRS 2464-024E and the Snowmass Village Municipal Code Section 245C5, and the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interests, except that no executive session shall be held for the purpose of concealing the fact that a member of town council has a personal interest in such purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale pursuant to CRS 2464-024A and Snowmass Village Municipal Code Section 245C1, provided there is an affirmative vote of 2/3 of quorum present at this meeting to hold the executive session and for the sole purpose of considering items A and B above. Provided further that no adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, regulation, or formal action shall occur at this executive session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Bill. Any discussion? All in support? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will be going into executive session in the room adjacent to council chambers, and then we will reconvene.
Is this yours?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was Doug's.
Well,
It looks very masculine.
well, it's no longer turned on. It's my work phone.
Oh.